anonymous genre.
It's always been about finding an answer. Why does my heart feel so bad? Moby asked in his 1999 album Play. At that time he was sharing his doubts, emotions, ups and downs with a huge fan base across the world, selling 10 million copies of the record. But it wasn't about selling the most records, and before becoming the new pope of electronic music, the New York-born musician spent some years finding his feet. First a punk rocker, he became a DJ and started producing dance music at the beginning of the 90s. Some say he helped bring the music to a mainstream audience in the US and the UK. His style was intriguing, new and fresh, but more importantly, Moby emerged as a generous artist, both with his fans and his fellow human beings. Nearly 20 years later, he still performs on benefit concerts and works with several charities, including the Humane Society, an animal protection organization. Whether it's age and experience or the teachings of the Bible, Moby seems to have found some peace of mind. It's time, he says, people stopped dreaming their lives in terms of market shares. His latest work is more personal, a long way from the standards of the music industry. It might once again take fans by surprise, but it's sure to keep their ears and eyes wide open.
Well, he's just released his 10th studio album, Destroyed. I'd like to welcome Moby to the show. Welcome to Once Man Cat.
It might be the 10th. I'm not sure, because in the course of my career, I've made a lot of albums. When I was first signed to a record company, I was the only artist on the label, and they wanted to make it seem like they had other artists, so they gave me a bunch of different names.
Okay.
And at one point, they actually released a compilation album, and it looked like it had like 6 or 7 different artists on it, and it was just me under different names. So when people say that this is my 10th album, I have no idea.
It's a nice round number.
10, it sounds good.
It sounds good, okay. Now maybe you are hugely famous.
Kind of you to say.
But you don't seem to be like one of the diva stars. You don't have big tantrums, apparently. Well, we haven't seen them anyway, and you don't seem to have massive breakdowns. You seem to be a generally nice guy. Is that the case?
I don't think I have a lot of perspective on myself. So I think if I was a sociopath, I would sit here and say I was a really nice person. Like people who are misanthropes and sociopaths, I think they go to sleep thinking they're the greatest people on the planet. So, but I guess if possibly I am a nice person, or I don't take myself too seriously, it's the product of the fact that I never expected to have a career as a musician. And whatever success I've had has been really strange and completely accidental, and it also happened later in life. You know, like I think the people who'd be difficult are the ones who become famous when they're 20 years old, because then their sense of self is informed by fame. And when I was 20 years old, I was living in an abandoned factory, returning cans with homeless people so I could have enough money to eat. And so that's where my sense of self comes from. So everything else, fame, success, seems like an arbitrary accident to me.
But you're also a bit of a controversial figure. I mean, lots of people in the techno scene, in the dance scene, haven't been fans of you. And like people like Eminem have been quite outspoken about how they don't like you. I mean, what are you doing that's winding people up, do you think?
It's a good question, and one that I've asked myself a lot. I truly don't know. I seem to have this innate, unique ability to irritate people or to make them dislike me. I don't know what it is, except there's an episode of The Simpsons where Lisa Simpson is being picked on by a bully, and they have no idea why the bully is picking on her, and it turns out that the bully is allergic to nerd sweat. And so Lisa apparently smells like nerd sweat. So maybe it's a pheromone thing where like something about me just seems to really annoy people. And I honestly don't know what. Maybe it's that I'm too outspoken. Like maybe if I were shy and reclusive and lived on some island above the Arctic Circle and never spoke to anyone, then I wouldn't irritate people as much. But I am kind of a loudmouth.
I think they'd still find something to moan about, to be honest. Now, it has been known that when men reach a certain age, they make lots of changes in their lives. Like you've given up drinking, you've left New York, you've moved to LA, huge mansion in LA. I wanted to ask you, this new album, Destroyed, is this your midlife crisis album?
I think I've been having midlife crises since I was about 7 years old, as far as like being plagued by self-doubt and wondering what the significance of my life is, which I think informs a lot of midlife crises. This album, Destroyed, it's more me, to an extent, turning my back on any idea of commercial viability for a few reasons. One, the music business is a disaster. So anyone who aspires to commercial success in 2011, it's a fool's errand. And because first of all, no one buys records anymore. And I, for the life of me, can't figure out why certain records are commercially successful and others aren't. So that's why at this point in my life and my career, I just try and focus on making music that I love. And if people like it, that's fine. And if they don't, that's okay too.
Okay, well, let's have a little listen to a song off the new album. This is called The Day, and it's from the new album Destroyed. But as well as The Day, the album also has songs on it like the religiously inspired titles like Stella Maris and The Violent Bear It Anyway. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Christianity, because for some people I think they find it quite shocking that such a dance music icon could also believe in God.
Well, I'm not really a Christian in any conventional sense of the word. Because I think the moment someone labels themselves as Christian or Buddhist, or maybe not Buddhist, but like if the moment you label yourself as adhering specifically to a strict religious tradition, you're sort of implying that you believe that other traditions are wrong, and you're implying that your understanding of God is somehow better than other people's understanding of God. And I believe that in a universe that's 15 billion years old and it's vast beyond our imagining, like none of us as humans can have a comprehensive understanding of who or what God is. So I get really wary about competitive religion. You know, competitive religion to me says more about humans than it does about any understanding of God. So I like the teachings of Christ. I also like the teachings of Buddha. I like Sufism. I like a lot of different religions. And I think that trying to understand any significance that our lives might have or our place in the universe, it's the most interesting thing to do with our lives.
Let's talk about your place in the universe, your place in the States. Why did you leave New York and go to LA after 25 years you were there?
Well, I was born in New York, and I've lived in Lower Manhattan for most of my adult life. And when I moved to Lower Manhattan, it was filled with artists and junkies and writers and musicians. And it was this, you know, really inexpensive place where artists could go and just focus on their art. And over time, New York has become the victim of its own success. And now it's primarily inhabited by bankers, which is fine. Bankers need a place to live, but I find being around artists to be a lot more inspiring. And I moved to LA for the main reason that it's still really cheap. And so it's a place where a lot of artists and writers and musicians can actually afford to pay the rent and focus on their art. Because I think some cities like London, New York, Paris to an extent, they've become so expensive that the remaining artists live in this state of constant desperation and fear, where they're so terrified about how they're going to pay the rent that they can't actually focus on artistic integrity. And oddly enough, LA, I think people can have a little more artistic integrity, which I can already see people watching being like,
surprising, isn't
LA
it?
has artistic integrity, but somehow that's what I find there.
Okay, well,
at least on the east side of LA where I live. Like, I don't live anywhere near Beverly Hills, and I never go there. I live, you know, on the east side of LA, which is more like hand-painted signs and crumbling houses.
Okay, perhaps we'll come and visit you. Now, the new album, along with the actual album, you've brought out a photography book. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the themes of those and how they're linked.
Well, I've been a photographer now for 35 years. It's just taken me 35 years to feel comfortable actually putting out a book of photos. And the photo book, it's a book about touring. And normally when people have documented touring, they document the glamorous side of it or the gritty side of it. You know, pictures of Led Zeppelin on their private plane or Bob Dylan backstage tuning up a guitar. And for me, touring is strange and alien, you know, because you're constantly in weird environments that, you know, like backstage areas, hotel rooms, empty airports, TV studios, and it's very alien. So the book of photos that accompanies the album Destroyed, it sort of documents the strange alien environments in which I find myself, juxtaposed with standing on stage in front of 100,000 people. So 1 minute you're by yourself in an anonymous, soulless backstage area, the next minute you're in front of 100,000 people, and then you're back by yourself in this anonymous environment. So I'm not complaining, but it's a deeply strange way to live.
Okay, and just wanted to ask you one last question because we are running out of time, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, but I can't seem to find out the truth to this question. Like, let's talk about your name.
Sure.
Moby. Are you really Herman Melville's great-great-grandnephew?
Supposedly. My legal name is Richard Melville Hall. So according to my parents and my grandparents, I'm related to Herman Melville. So before I was born, they decided if I were a boy, I was going to have this name Richard Melville Hall. And then after being born, they looked at me and they realized Richard Melville Hall is a fantastic name for a lawyer or an accountant, but not so much for a 10-minute-old baby. So as a joke, they started calling me Moby. And now 45 years later, I'm still saddled with my infant joke nickname.
I think it's worked for you.
It has literary pedigree, so I like that aspect of it. But
okay, baby, thank you so much for joining us.
my pleasure, thanks.
Now, only one of your single from the new album has been released, and you asked your fans to decide on which one to release next, and it has just been decided, and it's called Lie Down in Darkness, and we're going to end the show with that. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for joining us. I'll see you again tomorrow.
Today on the net, China denies online rumours that former President Jiang Zemin is dead. An opposition movement in Malaysia is calling for electoral reforms. And WikiLeaks is pressing charges against MasterCard and Visa. The question on many people's lips at the moment is whether or not former Chinese President Jiang Zemin is dead, but China appears to be censoring any online discussion on the subject, and the state news agency has denied rumours that the retired head of state has died. A Hong Kong television channel announced Jiang Zemin's death during a news broadcast on Wednesday night. The information had not been confirmed by authorities in Beijing, but the news spread across the net like wildfire. And across state-owned news portals like this one based in Shandong province, which had set up a special tribute page for the former president. It was then removed as the subject soon became banned on the web. And the words Jiang Zemin have been banned from social networks